everybody. Hello, fellow ranters. Never had a name for you guys, so I figured call you the Ranters. I think it has a nice ring to it, so I'm sticking with that. I just came up with it. I lied. I came up with that a few hours ago. But I'd like to introduce you to something different. Also, yes, partial face reveal. Hello. I'd like to introduce you to a different bit of content that's not quite gaming, not quite ranting. Maybe a little ranting. Maybe a little. I'd like to introduce you to the wonderful world of 3D printing. What's 3D printing, you might be wondering? Well, this little guy right here, who I've gotten to the habit of calling Scotch for some reason. Maybe it's the orange coloration. I'm not quite sure. But Scotch right here is 3D printing. The act of using a 3D modeling software, or CAD software, computer aided design, to send instructions to a 3D printer, a device on, I believe the term's a gimbal, maybe? No, I don't think gimbal's the right term, but it's more or less a machine that takes material, rolls of material, such as this right here. This right here is PLA. I do not remember off the top of my head what PLA stands for, but it's a type of plastic. That plastic comes in a spool. Said spool is fed into the machine, and from your computer or an SD card, depending on the kind of printer you have, instructions or G code is fed directly to the printer that tells it, this goes here, this goes here, print in this many layers. It tells your printer how to make things like Scotch here, or this big thing here, which I made maybe 2 years ago. Oops. My biggest to date, still. I'll admit it was a bit of a waste of a lot of white PLA and was a little more than a nightmare to excavate from its support prison. More on supports later. But it is still quite cool, if I do say so myself. Though I can always do better. So I was going to throw it off to the side as a joke, but in all honesty, one of its legs snapped off at a point. This thing's fragility scares me. So let's not go throwing stuff around and being reckless. Yeah, word of advice. If you're using a material such as PLA, chances are your print is a bit more on the fragile side, so don't go and just, boom, throw it off to the side like it's nothing. While you could easily use super glue or heat gun or even a 3D pen to possibly mend the damages, prevention is the best way to, avoid breaking anything. Don't go getting silly with your prints. But you might be wondering, well, Lich, how do I go about making my own 3D models for a 3D printer? Because maybe you just invested in one, or maybe you're thinking of using a service online or something similar. Maybe you have a friend who you can send some models to, or maybe you're just thinking about getting into the whole 3D printing biz, 3D modeling biz. Well, normally you need to get your hands on some decently high-end CAD software, but not everyone feels like shelving out the money, or not everyone has a computer that can run it. So I've got a little something I think all you amateurs of the hobby might be interested in. And frankly, it's a crying shame that not more people talk about this or know of it or recommend it. It's a free little software you can get right off the Microsoft Store. Apologies, Mac users. I can't really think of software off the top of my head, but I will look into it for you, Mac users, if you want something cheap and free. I realize those mean the same thing, but point still stands. It's free. It's easy to use. It's intuitive. It takes up no space, basically. And, well, I mean, I said it's free already, but I gotta emphasize it is free. So, let me introduce you to Microsoft's 3D Builder. Now, you might see I already have a little something in the preview there. That was just a test run. It's not a big deal, but you can create some impressive things with just this free little software if you're willing to put in the time and effort and just mess around a little bit. But I'm not going to make anything crazy just to show off what it can do. Now, as you saw, I just click new scene. That's the equivalent of opening a new canvas or something in art software, or maybe starting a new file or something in editing software. Just new canvas. Now, here in Insert, we have our basic 9 shapes, plus the ability to make a custom one. That will be the basis of everything you make in here. We've got a cube. We've got a cylinder. We've got a pyramid, which you can't actually see. Hang on. Yes, cube, cylinder, pyramid, cone, a sphere, a hexagon, a wedge, much like your average wedge of cheese, though a bit different in terms of proportions, a torus, basically just a donut or a bagel or whatever you want to call it, and a tetrahedron, basically a pyramid with 4 sides. And then we have our customs, which, when you get into spheres and cones, anything but a cube, you can get some quite interesting results. For example, here we have a cube with a latitude and a longitude of 10, which is 10 lines down, 10 lines across. Say we were to reduce that to, say, 6, or maybe 5, 3 even. Say we reduce it to 3 the other way, or maybe we reduce it to 6. And that gets us a nice little looking prism. So, you know what? Let's work with this. My design process when it comes to making models is I kind of just let the hand flow. You can come in here with an idea of what you want to make, obviously. Sometimes I sketch out something ahead of time, but for right now, let's freehand this and learn as we go. Now, what can we make from a humble 6-sided prism? Such a simple shape, so full of potential. Well, let's do something with that potential. I do believe that this could be, maybe this is the head of something. Let's bring in another custom shape. This time, let's bring in a custom cone. And instead of being a, a normal cone round in every direction, let's make ourselves a 6-pointed pyramid. So it matches up with our little prism here. And there we go. See, isn't that looking nicer already? How about we scale it down a bit? Excuse me. Yeah, let's scale it down a little bit here. These proportions aren't quite usual like most other prints might be. Oh, didn't mean to misclick, but here is your library. You could pull from some pre-made models already in the software, or you can pull from other files on your computer if you want to edit them or bring them into a different file. But for right now, let's stick with what we have here. Now I'm thinking to myself, how about we give this a little rounded bottom? Make it like a, what do you call it? Like a, not quite a paperweight, but just a little thing to have bob around on your desk. Here in the Edit tab, you could do a modicum of things. Either reduce the polygons, cut in half, smooth out excess polygons, though usually looks quite ugly, emboss where you can add some letters, or extrude where it goes from a certain level to print and creates a straight pillar down. But what we're looking for is taking these two and selecting intersect, where the result is the shape in between. Using a sphere and most other shapes results in a rounded bottom, much like that wonderful for the little bobbing figure I just mentioned. See, doesn't that look nice? I can picture just pulling it back a little bit and watching it just rock back and forth on my desk. Big fan of that. Now, actually, looking it over, maybe this can make for a nice little chess piece. This looks like a nice little pawn. So perhaps I'll do something with that. Well, I suppose just as is, this works quite nicely as a pawn. A little rounded bottom, so you just have it glide around. Perhaps I'll sand it down once it's printed, so it's especially round. I do have plenty of white and black filament, so I imagine it would look nice having these two little sides on a board. But how about we keep it white all the way? And so stuff doesn't get detached by accident, let's group this together so it thinks it's one model instead of multiple different pieces when we click off. That looks much nicer, doesn't it? Now, here we have our very first little print together. Doesn't it look nice? It's simple, sure, but not everything needs to be overly engineered and complicated. Of course, if you were to take the time and effort, I'm sure you could easily make plenty of intricate little contraptions, using some moving parts and whatnot out here, but this is just the tiniest little taste of what this free software are just waiting for you in your inside your computer can do. But it does seem a little lonely, doesn't it? So let's fix that, shall we? And we would start like we did before with another custom shape. This time, let's start with a custom cylinder. To keep things cohesive, let's keep it at a nice 6 sides. Appear to not be updating. Oh, apologies. I am a fool. Wrong setting. There we go. Isn't that nice? Let's bring that latitude down to 1. We don't need all those excess polygons now, do we? No, of course we don't. Polygons are for chumps. And frankly, too many, and starts to take a bit of a strain on both your computer and your slicing software. I'll touch more on slicing software in a moment. But, what do we do here for our rook? Well, I suppose let's start with repeating what we did before. Though, I don't believe it'll come out quite as nicely as it did last time. No, it would appear not. Well, let's take a step back, shall we? Well, that didn't work quite well, so how about we make it work a little better? What you could do is scale it up. And with luck, see, isn't that much nicer than before? But for a rook, it's a little too simple, isn't it? So let's do something about that simplicity, shall we? And here's one of my favorite methods of making multiple points at once. What you can do is say we want to make the individual little, what are they called again? Well, the individual little outcroppings on the tower or on the rook. What I like to do is I like to take a square, not square, a cube. Apologies for terminology mishap. And I like to copy and paste so we have two of them. If it would. There we go. And I'd like to rotate it 60 degrees. Well, not 60 in this case, but 30 actually. We would then rotate this one 60. No, apologies. We rotate this one 90. Then we bring in one more, and we would rotate this one 150 degrees. And make sure it's centered. But don't think about deleting them quite yet. First, let's make sure they're all grouped together, so they count as one. Then, let's bring this up a bit, shall we? And now, we would head on over to subtract. And that leaves us with 6 perfectly symmetrical outcroppings. Doesn't that look nice? Of course, if we, say, wanted to reorient them, we could always turn them 30 degrees. Or we could turn you 30 degrees. Apologies. But maybe that'll look nicer. I don't think so. So let's, once again, hit subtract. And that leaves us with a nice rook. Short, stout, but sturdy. Now, let's make sure it's painted so it matches up with its pawn friend over there, shall we? And there we go. Stout, sturdy rook. Nothing's knocking this one over, I don't think. But how about we make one last piece for today? Next, how about we make the... Now, this may seem like a bit of a curveball, but maybe let's try something a little more complex. Let's try making the powerful queen. The queen, the most powerful piece on the board, only limited by your own brain and limited by your opponent being smarter than you. But let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can do her a little bit of justice with simplicity. And we would go on to make another cone. And, just like before, 6 sides. And drop down to 1 because we don't need all those additional polygons. Now, I wanted to try something interesting. Copy and paste so we can get our hands on another one of these. And we invert. Apologies. And let's cut this for a moment so we can give it the old sphere treatment, just like before. Hit intersect, and there we go. And let's bring it back into the scene. Perhaps we scale it down to about half size. And let's bring it up a little bit. I've actually got an idea. How about we, for just a brief moment, disassemble our pawn here. Copy and paste its head, and we bring that over to the center. We shrink it down just a smidge. And one last time, let's copy and paste that smaller triangle, not triangle, cone, pyramid. It's a pyramid. And let's split it. Splitting, you can choose to keep either the top or the bottom of a shape, or both. You can reorient and slide that green layer down to make one half bigger than the other, or reorient which direction you want to cut in. But for now, let's just keep the top half and let's move it up a little. Let's scale it down a little bit. Perhaps this isn't our queen. Perhaps this is our king, actually. Yes, maybe this is our king. Let's, for the final time, Control Z. Let's unlock this. Apologies. I meant to hit unlock. Let's unlock this. Scale it down. Center it. And perhaps make this a little taller. And with that, I do believe we have our king. Now, let us group him all together. Hit group and paint him much like the rest of his subjects. Let's make sure to piece the pawn back together before we forget. And with that, we have 3 pieces of a mighty chess set. Next time, we'll put together the other 3. But for right now, that's a taste of what the wondrous freeware that is 3D Builder is capable of. I hope you're inspired to make a little bit of your own work. Maybe, hopefully, something much more complex than this. But that isn't quite the end. Of course, there's always more than just modeling. But that's for another time. For now, my fellow ranters, I expect you to have a good morning, evening, or night, depending on your time zone. Remember,